Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to Walk on Wednesday. Walk on Wednesday is where we bring a person that we think is pretty cool, that we think is doing something pretty interesting with their life or has an interesting contribution to this world. And we pick their brain, ask them questions. But before we bring on our distinguished guest, whom we love very dearly, who is, spoiler alert, Mukunda Maharaj. First, Kaustubha, any announcements?
Me? I don't know. Do I have announcements? Generally, you go to Mara for that.
No, I have some announcements. I do have announcements, thanks. Trevor Vaughn is offering his asana class for Patreon members at 8 a.m.
All righty.
And Lisa Bermudez is doing an essential oils workshop at 6:30 p.m. this evening for Patreon members. Ooh. And there are Bhakti recovery group meetings at 1 and 9:30 today.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
I've got a special announcement. I've got two special announcements. One is yesterday I was hanging out with Kaustubha. That's part of the announcement. I spent the day with Kaustubha. You know how pleasant that is? Hanging out with Kaustubha. It's one of the more pleasant things I do in my life. Well, so I got to go to his, you see his little ashram apartment. If you're listening live on Zoom, you can see Kaustubha's little ashram apartment that he lives in. It was such an honor to have him, and I sat with his wife, and I did an interview for this movie on a documentary about Harley Flanagan, who, besides being an interesting, very, very colorful character, was my Vartma Pradakshana Guru. That means the person who sort of first told you about Bhakti. And so for me, you can never pay back those people. So I packed my kids in Amtrak train, came downstate, and I did that interview. And Kaustubha, who is also, friends with Harley. If you know who Harley is or from the music scene, is a very, very influential person in the music scene. And also later sort of in the Brazilian jiu-jitsu scene. I'm incredibly grateful. It was a special time, and we're going to get him on the show.
Yeah, is there a working... Oh, sorry, go ahead. I was wondering.
Say, like in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, we're thinking. He was writing me all night last night.
Excellent. Is there a working title for that film yet?
I don't know. I don't think so.
So anyway, that's meant to come out in the summer, hopefully. So that'll be cool to see.
Yeah, and
you told some good stories.
He's got
really good stories.
The guy's, he's a good storyteller.
No, I'm saying you told some good stories.
I told some good stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Also, this Sunday, we have Drew Lawrence.
Right.
Everybody loves Drew Lawrence. Drew Lawrence is one of the top astrologers in the world, a Vedic astrologer. He was on the team that was doing the translation and editing of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. His devotee name is Duryodhan Guru. Just a wonderful man. And a lot of you guys have done your astrological chart with Drew. And every message I got was like, oh my God, I just got my chart read by Drew. It was unbelievable. And so we're getting him back on the show, and we're going to dive into some interesting stuff. As a matter of fact, I'm having a little powwow with him this morning, and we're just going to talk about new angles of astrological info, just to share with the people and to enlighten us how that can be useful in bhakti.
Great.
But
Hey, by
but
the
now,
way, you know, I was going to say, I think you already had a very special guest lined up for 2 weeks from now. So I think you got to double check
yeah.
your. Double check.
Oh, that's right. We're trying to get Malati.
Yeah.
We're trying to get Malati. Okay. Boy, this is getting exciting. Shama Sundar, Mukunda Maharaj, Malati. This is... So now let us introduce one of my favorite people in the entire world, Mukunda Maharaj, whose very life is one of these people that just like a shining jewel of a being. And already within the material realm, and then he meets his guru, and he just gives everything he has. He's like a very, very gifted musician, very, very influential person, soft-hearted to begin with. Then he meets his guru, and everything really just already explodes and blossoms. He's one of these people that's very impressive, as they've given their very life breath to their offering to their guru, and met one of the very, very first persons ever to meet our guru's guru, right? Swami Prabhupada in New York City in the 60s. And now he's just a simple, loving Swami that's been practicing bhakti since the early mid 60s. It's amazing to have him here. He's got so many incredible stories about the birth of bhakti. Please welcome Mukunda Goswami. Welcome, Maharaj.
Thank you for having me. I just want to start out by saying I appear to be very rugged up because it's, even though it's February, which is like August in the northern hemisphere, it's probably one of the coldest Februarys and wettest Februarys in record, and that's why I've got a lot of clothes on. Anyway, I'll try to talk about some of my meetings with Prabhupada before 26th 2nd Avenue. On my second meeting, I came to his loft place on the Bowery, but there was no bell there, and there was no way to access someone on the 4th floor. So I did what a lot of people in New York do when that happens, and I started throwing coins up to the window on the 4th floor, which was not an easy task, but I was probably only 25 then, whereas Prabhupada was he was 75. And after a few coins got up to the window and made some sounds, he opened one of the windows and stuck his head out and made a gesture with his index finger as if to say, he didn't say anything, but the gesture meant, I'll be right down. So he went down all 4 flights of stairs and opened the door for me, which was locked. I couldn't go in otherwise. And then I followed him back up the stairs, and he was quite ahead of me. And I muttered something about, well, I'm sorry I made you come all the way down the stairs, but I didn't really exactly know what to say. And I heard him mutter something like, it's my duty, but he said it like duty, D-Y-O-O-T-Y. And he just mounted those stairs like someone that was like 30 years younger than his age. So it finally got up to where he was, and we walked to the end of the loft, and he sat down, and I sat just opposite him, and I had to look at his old Underwood typewriter. He was typing the Bhagavad Gita on this old typewriter before electric. It wasn't electric typewriter, and he had this big stack of manuscript paper, and I found out that it was actually the Bhagavad Gita. So I really didn't know what to say or anything much. All I knew is that he was from India, and that he had a big book in front of him when he was lecturing. It was probably all in Sanskrit. It was probably the Srimad-Bhagavatam. So I suggested that he have a Sanskrit class. And since he was lecturing on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I said he thought Saturday morning would be a good time. So we agreed that Saturday morning would be the time for the Sanskrit class. So that was interesting. So I went to a place called the Orientalia bookstore in Midtown Manhattan, or it was just below Midtown. It was around 20th or 21st Street. And I got a book called First Lessons in Sanskrit Grammar by Judith Tybert. And the book showed how to make the Devanagari letters, the strokes, 1, 2, 3, and 4. But you had to have a special pen. And so I went to an art store and got this special pen that had a sort of a round end on it, and started to make the Sanskrit characters, the Devanagari characters. And then when I got to Prabhupada on Saturday, he had this chalkboard. And I don't know where he got it, but it was a chalkboard that had sort of frayed edges. And it looked like it was a piece of chalkboard that someone had discarded. It was probably in a garbage bin on the corners of one of the streets. I didn't know where he got it, and I don't know where he got the easel, but he had written on the board the first shloka of Bhama Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadir Radir Govinda Sabhakarana Karanam. At the end of the episode, everyone there learned that verse. And I still remember that verse. And the rough translation is that Ishvara Parama Krishna, Krishna is the Supreme Lord, Sachidananda Vigraha. He has a form which is blissful and full of knowledge. Anadir Radir Govinda, he's the original person. And Sarvakaranam Karanam, he's the cause of all causes. Sarvakarana Karanam. So indirectly, I was learning Sanskrit, even though he was teaching something that was very esoteric, because Brahma Samhita hadn't been published for many years after that. So I think it was the Friday before, he announced that he was going to conduct what he called a love feast. And I thought that was a very strange phrase for a sadhu to use, because love was sort of based on the summer of love in San Francisco, and feast was just love feast was just kind of an unusual term, and I had no idea what he meant by. I thought it was a strange thing to say, so I thought I would just go along and see what was happening. So what he did was he got he supervised the food production or preparations, and there was a devotee named Carol Becker was her name, who I think she was in the rear of the loft, who made all these preparations. And Prabhupada on the day of the love feast stopped being the stern sadhu and became the gracious host. He had a pot under one arm, and on the other hand, he was dishing out very generous helpings of prasadam to all the guests. There were about 5 guests there. It was a very dark and dingy place, but he could see that they had their, and the taste was very unusual. I hadn't had chickpeas like that before because of the spicing and the gravy, and it was a very unusual, but it was an acquired taste. I liked the taste, but it was something that I'd never tasted before, and I think a lot of the other people hadn't tasted it before either. But everyone seemed to like it, even though he was making them, forcing them to take seconds and thirds. He would just say, take, take, take. And he was a very gracious host, even though he put aside the demeanor of being the very stern and sadhu-like teacher that he was, sitting behind the big book on a raised platform. So that was my second meeting. And then in that second meeting, I told him that I was planning to go to India. I had tickets to go to India, but
Wow.
He said, I can teach you. And what do you do? He asked me. And I said, well, I play the piano. I'm a keyboard man. And he said, well, I can teach you how to play the piano for Krishna. And I thought, that was very strange. How could I play the piano for Krishna? I mean, flute I could understand. I was going to study the Indian flute, but playing the piano for Krishna, I just couldn't comprehend. So I changed the subject as politely and diplomatically as I could. And I just want to wish you all to have, who are our viewers and listeners, to have a great day. What's the day that's coming up? And I thank you for being here. And I look forward to our next meeting, which will be in a couple of weeks or something like that, or next week.
Next week. Thank you so much for sharing that, Maharaj. It's an amazing pastimes that you were able to be part of and to witness. I just want to make sure that we mention that you're sharing more and more information like this on your website, which is called outofthisworldstudios.com or .org, correct?
Yes, it's outofthisworldstudios.org.
Okay.
And if you go to it, you can hear some of these stories told in more detail. It's only Out of This World Studios is only a bi-weekly or fortnightly broadcast, but I'm thinking to increase it to weekly and even more frequently.
All right.
Anyway, please have a look at it, and you can find out more about what happened in the early days before 26 Second Avenue, which a lot of people think is the actual beginning. It was in the Bowery, which is a very seedy, as you know. Some of you who have been in New York know it's a very slummy place.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Go to outofthisworldstudios.org when you get time.
Okay.
Maharaj, this is incredibly valuable jewels. You're like a treasure chest filled with stories, information, and your whole life is just so I can appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for just being part of this show. We'll see you next week.
Next time I'll talk about how we acquired 26 Second Avenue and what happened in the Thank you again. And whenever that comes up, the next day or today's day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll see you next Wednesday. Hari Bol.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
That was beautiful, Kaustubha.
You know, when for many of our listeners who may not be aware, you know, when Mukunda Goswami is speaking about 26 Second Avenue, what he's saying is that after Srila Prabhupada came to the Western world, he was an elderly man that had never left India. He had to ride a boat for a month or so to get here. He had no money, had nowhere to go. He was kind of just like, almost like, in a sense, like couch surfing, a bit uptown at first. And then he got an invitation to share a loft with some young artist on the Bowery, which at that time in New York was like total Skid Row, like beyond imagination. It really
scary Skid Row.
Yeah. And so 26 Second Avenue was a few months later down the road when Prabhupada had just met a few kind of young beatnik intellectual characters who had an interest in India, who had been to India, who immediately took an interest in him and helped him find a little storefront on Second Avenue between First Street and Second Street on Second Avenue on the Lower East Side. And so that is considered in one sense the first Hare Krishna Bhakti temple in the Western world, right?
It's quite amazing.
Yeah. So well, I was just saying. So when he's saying that, a lot of people think, oh, that was the beginning, but he's saying, well, there's even stuff going on before that, and he was right there for it.
He's got so much cool insider info, doesn't he?
Yeah.
That the world will forget about unless you really churn it out and take it out of these people. I mean, he's 79 years old, and he's one of these guys. He wasn't like this hippie-ish type of guy. He was like a very beautiful, artistic, a jazz piano, incredible jazz piano player too.
Yeah.
And truthfully, these people, it's almost like they're sent from the spiritual realm to assist a spiritual movement. That's how when I look at people like Mukunda Maharaj, they're not ordinary people whatsoever. And for him to be on our show, I consider that this is the beginning of a great, day, a great week, a great month. I feel very lucky right now to have him give us his blessings for the show and show up.
Well, the other guest that we want to have on soon were Malati. She was the wife of Shamsundar Prabhu, who we've had on earlier, and they were three members of a group of three couples that then went and brought Srila Prabhupada to San Francisco right in 67, in the middle of the Summer of Love. They set up programs for Prabhupada to do with the Grateful Dead and Janis
Joplin. When we say, we're going to set up a program for you. It's like, okay, come over to my house. We're going to invite the neighbors. This was like a program with the Grateful Dead, a program with Janis Joplin or whomever.
And Allen Ginsberg introducing the whole thing. And then beyond that, then those and this is, this is significant because remember, I think it was 2 weeks, maybe it was last week, maybe it was the week before. We quoted a verse from Bhagavatam, Stane, what is it? I don't know. Slipping my mouth. That you can remain in your position, right? Remain in your, in other words, in your spiritual life. It's not that everyone has to give up everything and move to an ashram, or give up everything and move to the forest, and meditate.
Right.
But remain in your position and add the practices of bhakti. And Srila Prabhupada's guru, he had a mission going back to like the turn of the 20th century, to take bhakti to the Western world. And his disciple Srila Prabhupada carried that out decades later. But even his guru had tried to send really powerful intellectual swamis to London, right, to kind of get a foothold of the bhakti teachings in the Western world. And they went there, and they really weren't able to make much of a splash. They weren't really able to, nothing lasting developed of it. They returned back to India, in one sense, having not really accomplished the goal. But so then in the late 60s, these three couples who were they were into that whole scene, like the whole San Francisco, birth of the hippie scene and all that. They were, but they were very new to, incredibly new to bhakti, right? They just had faith in their guru. They had faith in Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada was translating it to them in ways that they could understand and then explain to others. Those three just dropped everything, flew to London. They had no money. They had nowhere to stay. They were couch surfing, right? They're just trying to figure it out. And within a very short time, they had this goal. Well, let's connect with the Beatles and let's let them know about this, if they know about it.
I mean, it's hard to understand, because a lot of you guys who've been listening on Zoom, you've been around longer than they were. Some of you guys have been listening for 2 years every day. It's like me saying, okay, Cam, Finn, Robin, Ragnar, I'm going to send you guys to Taiwan, and you're going to start a Hare Krishna temple.
And you're going to meet Oprah, and through her, she's going to, or something like that, right?
Jimmy James, Genevieve's, I'm going to send you to Sydney. You're going to open a temple. But, sending you to places where you don't even speak the language sometimes, sending you to places where you don't know anybody. And
no
not
resources.
only you don't have to figure out the language. You got to figure out the legalities of opening a temple in these places. And then just putting your nose to the grindstone and doing the hard work while having your own personal spiritual integrity in the midst of the crazy 60s and the temptations of the world, and going back to your own type of Maya. And it's interesting when you put yourself out there and start to take care of other people, you get less out of your head and with your own issues. When you care about other people and their issues that they're going through, it sometimes helps you get right out of your own issues.
It's the best way.
It's the best way. That's why doing service, being of service, is such a big part of bhakti, because I can just be so self-indulgent in my own, what I'm going through, in my past and my trauma and my pain. Guess what? There's other people who have much more pain than you. Extend your hand to them, and in that extension of your hand, your own heart will heal. Write that down, Mara.
We got some takeaways over here. Yeah. So in any case, Mukunda Maharaj, he was right at the cutting edge of in the history. It will go down in history. Now bhakti is spread around the globe, and it grows and increases and manifests in so many different ways. Well, this was a person that was right at the forefront of making that happen by being a direct assistant to Srila Prabhupada in his earliest days in the Western world. So he's got a lot to share. I really recommend people go to his website. What was it again, Mara?
Outofthisworldstudios.org.
That's right. Outofthisworldstudios.org. And,
well, that's why, Kaustubha, that's why it's so crazy how you and me got into bhakti also on the Lower East Side. It's such a weird parallel world. We were on the Bowery. We were right around 26 Second Avenue, actually.
Yeah, right around the corner.
And that's where, Harley used to preach to me. And John Joseph used to preach to us. And we were just sort of also just wandering the streets and trying to figure out life and piecing together, trying to find. You made some great points yesterday. We weren't straightened out by, okay, give up this crazy life of punk rock and become, wrinkle-free, perpendicular and parallel born-again Christians. We were too out of the box and crazy, which fit right in wonderfully. It was a perfect marriage with the wacky world of Eastern philosophy and religion, which was filled with crazy foods and crazy music and crazy outfits.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, I could do this. And then going to the Brooklyn Temple and seeing a kirtan. Now, when people think of a spiritual kirtan, they're thinking, Om Jai Ganesha, Jai Ganesha, Om Shanti. You don't think of like, these guys, 8 mridanga players and everybody with giant cartels and wampers jumping up and down like a mosh pit. The closest thing you could get to a mosh pit is everybody in the Brooklyn Temple of every different ethnicity you could imagine, packed in one room, screaming and practically crying their heart out
Sweating
to God.
it out. Yeah.
Sweating it out. And the first time I saw a kirtan like that, I was like, what is going on here? This is spiritual? It's the closest thing to a hardcore punk rock show I've ever seen, except everybody's in bliss. Everybody's got a smile on their face. There's no ego here. It's a very attractive thing. And I feel like that potency was like planted in our hearts in the same geographical location. So, as Mukunda Maharaj.
Yeah.
It was quite amazing.
I remember the first time I met Mukunda Maharaj was in Tompkins Square Park.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Connections.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, let's dive into the Srimad-Bhagavatam, my friend.
We start a new chapter today. A whole new story today.
Ooh.
Important one.
All right. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam medirayat. Before reciting the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan. Unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshu badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart will become eradicated, and loving service to the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Gyana Timarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmadatam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My teachers have come into my life with a torchlight of knowledge. I offer my obeisances at their lotus feet. Reading from the Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 8, Text 1. And here's the new section.
Yeah.
Dhruva Maharaj leaves home for the forest. Now, if I hear somebody's going to leave home for the forest, I was like, oh, interesting. Backpacking trip, Appalachian Trail, perhaps. You got to understand, this isn't a guy going out on an incredible adventure into the. He is a child. That's like younger than my son. Dhruva Maharaj was a young prince, and he's going to go into the forest to find mystic powers.
5 years old?
I think he was 5.
Yeah,
No?
I think so. I think he was 5, yeah.
Yeah. He wants to gain mystical powers and seek revenge.
Okay. Yeah. But he gets.
Imagine if you're in Boy Scouts and we were all going camping, and one of the kids like, yeah, I'm just going with you because I'm going to develop powers to seek revenge against my father and mother.
And but what happens is he meets a sadhu, right? He meets a Bhakti-yogi, turns everything around.
And then nothing is the same.
Okay.
Really true. Happened to Mukunda Maharaj. Happened to you and me. Nothing's the same.
Yeah, it's true. But this chapter, it's got an interesting little. Before we dive into Dhruva's story, which we will start early in this chapter, there's just like a little section that it's really unusual. It's a little different, and it has to do with, as we've been going through Bhagavatam, we've been going down, because this is mostly an audio connection that we have with people, we really should be sharing charts, right, of like the different lineages as they're coming down from Brahma, and then the sons of Brahma, and then, their marriages, and then all the different characters in Bhagavatam are coming down this, in a sense, like this family tree. And we've just been hearing about lineages coming from the daughters of Svayambhuva Manu, right? The daughters of one of the sons of Brahma. And we heard about Devahuti, we heard about Prashuti, and you know who came further down in those lineages. Now we're going to some of the sons of Brahma, and we're just talking a bit about them first. But this really interesting, you know, it sounds like a very metaphorical passage here, and certainly it has metaphorical meaning. But I believe that, you know, within the tradition, it's not seen as purely metaphorical. So anyway, we can read these. It's talking a little about the dark side, how some of the darker elements enter into the universe, and they take birth in these personified forms.
Interesting, huh? Yeah, and we're going to start with the narrator, Maitreya. The great sage Maitreya said, the four great Kumaras, sages headed by Shanaka, as well as Narada, Ribu, Hamsa, Aruni, and Yati, all the sons of Brahma, did not live at home, but became Urdhva Reta, or Naistiki Brahmacharis, unadulterated celibates.
Okay. So these are the sons that did not help out in the plan of populating the universe, right? They all became brahmacharis. They all became renunciates, like monks.
Maitreya told Vidura, the great soul from Damba and Maya were born greed and nikriti, or cunning. What?
Okay, so
great
this
soul.
is
From
what I'm saying,
Damba
right?
and Maya were born greed and nikriti.
So what we're
I
going
think
to
you
have
skipped
here.
number 2.
Oh, that's. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. Another son of Lord Brahma was Irreligion, or
Adharma.
Adharma,
Yeah.
whose wife's name was Falsity. Is this a play on words?
Well, that's right. That's what I was just speaking about, Raghunath. In other words, certainly these can be understood metaphorically, but I don't think within the tradition they're understood as purely metaphorically. But there were beings that personified these qualities.
Hi, this is my wife, Falsity. Hi. It's sort of a
I'm
pretty
Irreligion.
name, isn't it?
This is my wife, Falsity, and these are our
Falsity.
children, Bluffing, Cheating, and Illusion.
The two demons were taken by a demon named Niriti, who had no children. Niriti.
Okay.
Which, oh, great soul, Damba and Maya were born of greed and nikriti, or cunning. From their combination came the children named Krodha, anger, and Hinsa, envy.
Okay.
And from their combination were born Kali and his sister Durukti, harsh speech.
Do you remember that drama it's a drama that goes back in the history of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, but it was done in Prabhupada's time, where it's like the age of I think the drama is called The Age of Kali, right?
I think I do remember that,
right? And
but
he
I don't
had a
remember it. But
sister,
I remember somebody did it.
Yeah, and but it played with these kind of things. But I mean, let's take a look at it. First, you have Adharma, right? Adharma takes birth, and Adharma marries Falsity, right? So there's a union. These two are together. These two are related. You don't find one without the other, right? Falsity and Adharma. And then they give birth to Bluffing, to Illusion, and to Cheating.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you know the lineage continues. From them are born Greed and Cunning.
What a family!
And then it gets worse. They have children, Anger, and Envy. And from their combination are born the age of Kali, right? Kali, the representation of quarrel and hypocrisy, right? And then he marries his own sister, which is Adharmic, and who's his wife and sister? Harsh speech.
Harsh speech.
Think about that, right? Like, think about it. This is what's being shared here. We've heard about Brahma and these incredibly important sages, that their wives, who are also very important sages, and through them come the teachings of yoga and the teachings of bhakti. And that's what the Bhagavatam consists of, right? But we're also hearing how born into the universe, from those sages, we get the teachings of bhakti through which we can transform our life towards happiness. Here we're hearing about the principles that are disadvantageous or problematic for the development of our bhakti and ultimately the development of our happiness. but it's being all presented in these personified forms. But just think about it. Like, in other words, my harsh speech, right? Like, probably all of us, there's certain. I know people that never use harsh speech. Like a person like Mukunda Maharaj, you're never gonna.
Never
have
speaks
you ever,
harshly.
have you
don't
ever,
speak harshly, my friend.
Oh no, I do, Raghunath.
When? When have you ever spoken harshly?
No, many.
Mara, come on.
times. And I
Actually,
continue
I
to.
don't know. I don't think Mara speaks harsh either. Actually,
I've
Mara
never heard
barely.
Kaustubha speak
Mara
harshly.
barely speaks.
So, but we do. I've known Mukunda Maharaj for 35 years or so. Never once have I ever heard him utter harsh words.
I speak harsh many times per day. Sadly, that's sad. Actually, that's a sad state of existence. But I do. And I'm going to just fess up publicly now and share that.
But my point is that
what can we do about that, Kaustubha?
We tend to. Our tendency will always be to justify, to rationalize it, right? Well, there's a reason why it's justified, and also it's necessary in this case because of A, B, and C.
Well, maybe if you had a teenager, you would speak a little harsher.
That could be.
Or a kid, or if Mara had a kid, you'd be like, all right, come on, get in the
I gotta
car.
say this about your teenager, though. Rocco, I mean, my God, this kid is just like, every time I see him, he's just like manifesting purer and purer qualities. It's like,
He's pretty pleasant. He's the most pleasant 15-year-old I've ever met.
it's amazing. Yeah,
so
it's
sweet.
really amazing.
I'm not
yeah.
giving him. I'm not taking any credit. I'll take credit for the younger one, who's
No,
like,
you
what
do
do you
get
call
the
that
credit.
cartoon character? Who's like the whirling
Tasmanian
tornado.
Tasmanian devil.
Tasmanian devil. Yeah, that's my youngest son.
Well, Harley's wife said, Harley got a wonderful wife named Laura, and by chance she ended up in the elevator with your two sons. And so I live on the 6th floor, so there's about, I don't know, 30 seconds for the elevator or less to get from the 1st floor up to the 6th floor. And within that short moment, basically your son Tarun was explaining to her how he headbutts people, even teenagers. And it hurt them. Like,
Hey, bragging about how he hurt people with headbutting.
yeah.
Yeah.
But in any case, back to harsh speech, we generally we generally try to justify it or rationalize it. Well, this is giving us something to think about. Is my harsh speech justified, or is it born of my anger, born of my envy? Is it coming down in a lineage of cunning and greed and illusion, and ultimately Adharma? Is it ultimately being born from Adharma? It gives us something to think about. And so, while I say I went to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. I didn't find anything, and in Prabhupada's commentary, I'm not finding anything. But I do believe that within the tradition, we're not seeing these as just metaphorical ideas, but that they were actually people that did personify these qualities. But certainly we can understand it metaphorically that harsh speech is born of anger, which is born of greed, and which is born of cheating, which is born of Adharma. We can tie things together that way.
Very good. Very good. Okay, so, O greatest of all good men. Text 4. O greatest of all good men. He's speaking to Vidura. I tell you, Vidura was a greatest of all good men, wasn't he? What a great guy.
Yeah.
I would love an Uncle Vidura.
Yeah.
O greatest of all good men, by the combination of Kali and harsh speech were born children named Mrityu, death, and Biti, fear. From the combination of Mrityu and Biti came children named Yatana, excessive pain, Yatana, and Naraya, or hell. Text 5.
This is where our harsh speech leads. This is where our cheating leads.
Yeah, right. Excessive pain and hell. It
And
really
death,
does.
repeated birth and death.
Right. Death, fear, all these things. It's like they should be red flags when all these things are coming. Harsh speech, anger. We should understand this is like a downward. We're going down. You better plug it up while it's. You better plug it up, or you're just going to slip down that slope.
Plug it up. That's a takeaway for
Plug it up.
There's a T-shirt, right?
Plug it up, or you're going to slip down that slope.
All right.
My dear Vidura, I have summarily. Is that a word? I have summarily
Probably is.
explained the causes of devastation. One who hears this description of the one who hears this description 3 times attains piety and washes the sinful contamination from his soul. That's it.
Bad karma.
3 times.
1, 2, 3. Let's do it right now.
Verses. So you can read that again 3 times. It's almost worth going back 3 times.
I can do that.
That's like an easy task. Hey, look what we get for that. We attain piety and we wash away sinful contamination from my soul.
That bad karma, right?
Yeah.
That's been accumulating. That's sitting there like seeds. That's just waiting to manifest. That aprarabdha karma.
Aprarabdha, yeah.
That's waiting.
It's just like spring cleaning of the windows, isn't it? Like when you got to just Windex those windows, scrub it off. You can't see anymore. Or scraping off the ice. Those in Australia have no clue what I'm talking about. But there comes a time when you got to get these scrapers and scrape your windshields and get all the ice off just so you can see out, so you don't kill anyone when you're driving your car. So this is what's layered on the whole, layers of ice
thick.
And filth and mud. And we got to get that off of the heart. The soul is pure. It wants to shine.
Well, you know, here, for instance, what is piety, right? It's a disposition, right? It's like a disposition that you carry with you, wherein you're inclined to good. You know,
you're inclined to act like the soul acts. That's what piety is, right? It's when your external body and mind are sort of doing the same dance with the soul. Whereas Adharma is like, you know, someone's doing the salsa and someone's doing the hustle. You know, it's 2 different dances going on. It's a big mess. Right. So my soul wants to act in you like that? You know, my soul is acting in a certain way or wants to act in a certain way. But my material consciousness is just got a bunch of bad habits accumulated over lifetimes, not just this lifetime, but this lifetime, but lifetimes of bad habits.
That's when we talk about sin, like when it's talking about sin here, try not to necessarily think about it as like, oh, doing bad things that some dogma has prescribed as being wrong for no good reason, right? But really what we're talking about here, this type of sin in particular, is that my mind has become accustomed, has become trained to pursue that which brings negative results and negative experiences and negative results to others and to myself, that programming has become established through habit within me. Now, so what this is saying, this text is saying, is if you read this 3 times, right? If you read what we just read 3 times.
Read that again. Read that again.
Yeah. And I believe it also implies the reflection on it, right? The thinking about it, the contemplating it, that purifies you, that it's that system, one, in a very practical way. Let me contemplate this truth to counteract the negative programming within my mind. Let me replace the negative programming within my mind with positive programming. This is the positive programming that you have to hear, that you know, again, even just this one example, like my harsh speech is born of lower qualities that all can be traced back to Adharma. So there's a practical way where our reflection on truth purifies the mind. That there's a takeaway right there. That might even be a T-shirt, right? Reflection on truth purifies the mind.
Are we allowed to say our own one is a takeaway? Are we allowed to say that?
I don't know.
Or must it be volunteered by the other person?
Just kind of framing
No,
it,
you can
know.
say it.
Yeah.
You can say it. We're good. We're good like that.
We're good with that. We're all trying to help one another here, right? And so, but also I believe it's not merely, right? There is that very practical idea that let me contemplate truth within my mind to reprogram my mind. That's real and that's happening here. In Sanskrit, it's called manana, like reflection, right? Reflection on truth.
Manana.
But also, I believe that a really important aspect of this is, now you take it more like on the what's a good word to describe it? That there's a special blessing, right? Like that's just beyond the purely rational, mechanics of this. That there's a blessing in that the Srimad-Bhagavatam itself is a manifestation of Krishna. It is, it's him in full. And by saying, I surrender my mind to you, right? Like I'm taking my mind and I'm offering it to you to contemplate this, that there's a very powerful spiritual, beyond logic, kind of dynamic taking place, wherein you're turning yourself back to Krishna and that spiritual energy is flowing. So that you could read this 3 times, contemplate it, and that all that negative programming is starting to disappear, which is so hard to do by other yogic processes, but it's so practical here in this process of bhakti. What's so funny? You're muted, or you knocked your cable or something. Still muted. Can't hear you. There, that's good.
That's good. No, it isn't.
Oh, that's the other microphone now, maybe. Raghunath.
Oh, no.
You still can't hear you.
No,
We can, now
There
I
we
can.
go.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Check this out. This has something. This isn't a squirrel.
All right.
I just gonna preempt this. I follow on Instagram an account called Supercar Fails. Supercar Fails.
Yes.
Where you get like luxury automobiles that just like they're just trying to show off or something, and they just like destroy their car within moments. And they're very, very high-end cars. So the concept of sin is like sort of supercar fails. We are driving around in this incredible work of art, this body, and we ourselves are incredibly precious. But due to some ego, we are just driving all. We just do something stupid that makes us drive all over the road, smashing into one guardrail, hitting into a telephone pole, spinning back out, ramming into other vehicles. Don't get hung up on the word sin. It just means you're driving recklessly. You're not. Sin doesn't mean God is punishing you. You silly goose. You're punishing yourself. You've got this vehicle. Silly goose. You silly goose.
No, please continue.
Joe Rogan called me a silly goose.
I know. I remember that.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we are silly gooses. We're silly geese, right? We have this great vehicle. We ourselves are a spiritual being. We don't need validation from the world. God already validates us. We are pure spirit souls. We are born with great worth. But out of some type of illusion, I'm trying to impress everybody, and I'm just wrecking my vehicle. And guess what? When you have a crazy guy driving on the road, everybody else is in danger as well. You're not just wrecking your life, you're wrecking everybody else's life on the road. You're putting us all in danger. So sin has nothing to do with God being sadistic. Sin has to do with you just being a little reckless, man. Get on track. You've got a great vehicle. You're a great person. Move forward.
And I think what you were saying with your silly goose is not that God is watching us, sees we make a little step to the side and gets upset and punishes us. What it is that we are banging our heads against the wall. We are not recognizing how the universe works. We're not recognizing how nature works, and we're working against it, and we're doing it in patterns and habitually, and we're harming ourselves, and we don't even get it. Even though we're depressed all the time, even though we're in anxiety all the time, even though we're suffering all kinds of pain, we don't stop to think, maybe it has something to do with the way that I'm approaching the world.
Don't be a supercar fail.
Don't be a supercar fail.
There you go. Don't be a supercar fail.
Silly goose.
Silly goose. It's true that, if as we become more Krishna conscious, you can follow things like supercar fails and see the spiritual angle of it. Do you understand?
You've come to that level, Raghunath. You've risen to that level
of God. I see God everywhere.
Yeah, I see. Are there other Instagram pages that you also translate in this way?
Big cats of Nambia.
Okay.
Big cats of Nambia. Amazing.
It's all good stuff.
I saw a leopard take down an ostrich yesterday.
And wow.
It just shows you the temporality of existence.
Okay, I was waiting for the translation.
That's it. That's what it is. You often see some type of, simple grass-eating animal just drinking from a lake, and you're like, oh, here it comes. Here it comes. And then all of a sudden, the crocodile of time, the crocodile of old age, the crocodile, right, of misfortune, the crocodile of, that's what it is. We got a lot of crocodiles in our life chomping at us.
Well, here's a metaphor, okay, and I want you to translate it, but I saw this on the Nature is Metal Instagram page. and it showed an owl, and the owl had captured a mouse, and the owl was flying through the air with the mouse. Okay.
I saw it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Tell
then
me.
there was an eagle, and the eagle came down and attacked the owl in midair. The owl freaked out and let go of the mouse. Now, if picture yourself, you're the mouse, right? First you got the owl. That's terrifying. And then it flies you up into the air. And then you're like, oh no, this is it. And then these eagles come and you're like, it's going to attack the owl. Maybe there's some hope, right? So the eagle attacks the owl. The owl lets go of the mouse. Now, of course, the mouse is falling, to its death. And then just to add a little insult to that injury, then the eagle comes down and it catches the mouse in midair and flies.
The mouse is just a plaything.
Okay,
Just a
so
plaything.
what does the mouse represent?
Mouse represents the pathetic struggle for existence in the material world.
And who is the mouse?
You. I mean, me and you.
Okay,
Not just you. Mara is a mouse too. And we're just getting played around. First, like, okay, here comes chronic disease. Owl. Here comes, okay, you get over chronic disease. I healed it. Here comes death. Here comes loss of loved ones. Another a vicious ostrich. All attacking this poor little mouse.
What is it about ostriches, Raghunath, today?
They're freaking weird. Oh my God, Kaustubha.
What?
We totally forgot.
What?
We were going to bring in this whole thing to the show today.
Yes, that's right. Somehow we got there. That was the Paramama leading us in this direction.
That was the soul talking to us to talk about this crazy. First of all, I'm going to preempt this by saying, if you think ostriches are bad,
forget ostriches. They're nothing.
That's nothing compared to, have you ever seen these birds?
It's called
that look like Muppets.
They look like, you don't think, when you see a photograph, you don't think that's a real bird.
No, so you're like, this is a Muppet. They're not. They're real.
But a creepy Muppet.
That's it. Jeffrey Ackler knows it. Aaron Erskine knows.
Shoebill.
A shoebill.
Stork.
A shoebill, yes.
Shoebill stork.
Tell us about the shoebill stork.
When you see a photograph of the shoebill stork, it looks like a creepy Muppet. It doesn't seem real.
A creepy puppet.
Thing's like really huge.
And it's sort of smiling like in a creepy
in a
clown
nasty way.
Like,
sneering, smiling. Yeah, it's very creepy. It's got this huge beak, and the thing is like a razor. Like what it does is the way it eats is it captures like baby crocodiles or other baby creatures, and it bites their heads off and then eats them.
And it's not like a beak, like you think, okay, like a crane has like a pointy beak, like a needle nose pliers. No,
it's like a big wooden shoe.
Giant clam. It's like a giant clam type of beak. Everybody stop what you're doing and just YouTube or Google search images for shoebill bird.
And it's so sad that I saw this David Attenborough thing with the shoebill stork, and it shows it has two little hatchlings.
Yeah, they have two babies.
And when they're young, the bill is so heavy that it has a hard time bouncing because it's like its head is so heavy. They're just kind of wandering around. But what happens is when they're young, one of the children begins to attack the other and beat it down and like practically kill it. And the mother, and I saw this film, and the beaten down little baby bird, it goes to its mother for some shelter.
Mother, help me.
Just like, forget it. I'm going to the strong one.
You're the weak one.
You're
going to kill our race off.
Oh, it's brutal.
Like eugenics. It was horrible. These birds might be evil. Like if there is such a thing.
Well, I mean, like we had here, from greed and cunning was born Crota and Himsa, and from them was born death and fear. And I think from one of them was born the shoebill stork.
From harsh speech and evil is born the shoebill stork.
Oh man, it's brutal.
And the fact that they just look so goofy, like sort of like a creepy clown.
The karma of it to be born into that body. And you know what, Raghunath? It's likely in our sojourn through this material world.
Yeah, we've all had to been there. You don't hate them. You were it. You were it yourself. You were biting the head off your own child.
Maybe that should be the title of today's episode. You were biting the head off your own child. Episode 668.
Oh my God.
Oh, the shoebill.
Anyway, what was our transcendental message behind that? We're like, we have to share this with our whole community.
I don't know. Well, you're the expert translator. You said you've risen to this platform of spiritual insight. Let's hear it. Tell us about the shoebill and what we're meant to understand.
Oh God.
We
There's
can come
evil.
back
There's
tomorrow.
evil out there. We've all been there. We've all been there. Don't judge. Don't judge, because you're a moment away from taking birth as a shoebill yourself.
Oh.
Let's use this chance to let's use this human opportunity to evolve.
Yeah.
Hey,
That's
maybe if you're like sarcastic and snarky and rude and cruel, that is sort of setting you up to bite the head off other people. You might take birth as a shoebill bird.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Stop it.
Change
Break
what's
those
coming out of
cycles.
your mouth. Change that energy coming out of your mouth.
Okay. I'll take that. Excellent translation there, Raghunath.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mara, do we have any other takeaways for today?
Is it
do.
takeaway time?
Yeah.
It is. Nothing is the same after getting a taste of Bhakti.
Nothing is the same. Do you know that song I'm talking about?
Is it
It's a song, but it was on
I think
a
Prince wrote it and Sinead O'Connor sang
No,
it.
it's
Is that right?
super old.
Is that a
It's like from the
different
50s. It was a perfume company used it for a commercial. He touched me. He put his hand on mine, and then he touched me.
Oh, I know that.
Or she touched me. I think it was she touched me. He touched me sounds weird. He touched me. She touched me, and finally, nothing
Okay.
is the same. I've sang
Nothing's
that
in the-
millions of times on the show. Someone's got to Google that or Spotify that. She touched me, or he touched me.
You don't have to, but
Does anybody remember that commercial?
I remember the song.
Back
Go
to
on.
our takeaways.
Yes, back there, takeaway.
Extending your hand to others heals your own heart.
Yes.
Yes.
Is my harsh speech born from anger, greed, envy, and Adharma?
I bet it is.
Ooh, yeah.
Harsh speech and anger should be red flags.
Yep.
True.
Scrape away the ice caused by material consciousness. The soul
We're
wants to shine.
We're scraping away from Butler, PA.
Replace lifetimes of negative programming with contemplating truth.
I missed that
That's
one.
it.
That makes sense.
That's because I was speaking.
That's because it's from Kaustubha. plug it up or you're going to slip down that slope.
Oh, plug it.
that was you.
Yep. Reflection on truth purifies the mind.
It does.
Yeah, it does.
The eagle or owl or crocodile of time and old age and misfortune is chomping at us.
Or ostrich.
Or ostrich.
Or shoebill.
Or sheeple. Don't be a supercar fail, you silly goose. And you were
Ooh,
you
I
were
like
biting the
that.
head
That
off
one
your own
makes
child.
so much sense, doesn't it? It sounds so crazy, but don't be a supercar fail, you silly goose.
Yeah. And you're biting your what was it? You're biting.
You were biting the head off your own child.
Yes, Raghunath. Think about that today. It's a great day for a great day, everyone.
Good morning. Oh, Krishna.
Shoebill.
Ever get like exhausted from laughing? Like I just like lost some weight there. What a workout. Thank you everybody for joining us. Woo woo. Thank you, Mukunda Maharaj. What a man. What a story. What a life.
Yeah.
What a life of devotion. I want
Just make
people
your
like
life
that
a
in my
life of
life.
devotion, right? Just do it. It's only one life.
Do it. It's only one. You only get one life. Don't screw it up.
No, it's the other way. It's
No,
like,
actually,
you get so many, but just take one of them and offer.
Oh, that's right. You don't only get one life. You actually have millions of lives. I mean,
One
philosophically,
of them was a
incorrect.
shoebill.
You get millions of lives. Just maybe this one. Give this one to God. Because you might forget about God in your next life.
That's right. And you could take birth as a shoebill and have your head bitten off by your mother.
Now, the interesting thing is, shoebills are beings. They're beings who have an existence, who have a reality. You could, it's not like they're spirit souls. They're just in a really, it's
weird
not
body.
a supercar, that's for sure.
It's a really weird body.
It's a really weird vehicle to be driving around in. It's like,
Crazy, that thing. When I first saw photos, I thought that is not a real bird. Like literally, I thought that's a Muppet right there. It's like a really
That's like a
creepy
Muppet.
looking, scary Muppet.
yeah, like from a scary kids show.